Recently, I made a foolish and perilous descent into the infernal hellscape known only as Twitter, without first checking the weather forecast, which, as I later found out, read cloudy, with a high chance of a shitstorm. Apparently, a new Harry Potter game that at times looks like something you would find on the App Store under the name Wizard's Apprentice, the Son of China, is coming out. As is tradition, this forced people from all corners of the spectrum, both political and autistic, to come out and give a piece of their mind. So I'm going to do the same. I'll be reviewing a Harry Potter game from my childhood that is objectively not the cream of the crop, but is one I remember fondly. Also, Harry Potter 1 and 2 refused to run properly on my system, which rather limited my options. So, prepare yourselves, because today we won't be casting spells, escaping spiders or connecting Lego bricks. We'll be playing one of the worst fictional sports ever devised. A sport so bad that a team that manages to end the match is entitled to 150 points compensation for their emotional distress. This is Harry Potter Quidditch World Cup, developed by EA Brightlight, a studio whose two previous games were respectively Wizards and FIFA. So, from now on, in order to save both your time and my vocal cords, I'll be shortening its name as Wizard FIFA. Wizard FIFA follows the standard sports game formula of tackling, passing, shooting, and violence. Boom! At least, that's what I think the standard formula is. To be completely honest, I've never owned a console, so my only experience with these sorts of games is when I went to my friend's house at age 8 and played NHL on his PS2, and even then, we preferred WWE SmackDown, or more likely, went to another friend's house and played Heroes 2, because we were cultured. And also because we used to be a part of the Eastern Bloc. But since the internet is predominantly American, and Americans have a strange taste in video games, I have, by the process of osmosis, gotten a general idea what these games are like. But before I delve deeper into the ways that Wizard FIFA differs from your yearly scam, I have to briefly comment on its technical side. You see, Wizard FIFA was developed in 2003 for the PS2, Xbox, GameCube, Game Boy and PC, and like most games of its time, only supports two different resolutions, both of which happen to be 4:3 aspect ratio. And since there is no windowed mode, to make sure you don't involuntarily gouge out your eyes from looking at the stretched out PS2 graphics, you will need to go to your closest used electronics store and buy an old 4:3 monitor. I personally already had this bad boy with 40,000 lifetime hours of use that I bought for $10 from a family friend. It still works perfectly fine, provided you keep the power cable at a slight curve starting about 2 centimeters from the socket. It also came covered in white powder. Anyway, once you've gotten a suitable screen, you can acquire the game from this archive. It is smaller pre-installed than installed, which is quite strange. But both should work on Windows 7 just fine. And if you're using Windows 10 or Mac, good for you. When you first start Wizard FIFA, you'll notice that the name is a scam, as the World Cup is not even available until you finish your compulsory Wizard education. Not only that, but pretty much every feature of this game is locked behind a certain number of collectible cards, including show matches, difficulty settings, and even the violence. These cards are unlocked by scoring well on the school challenges and other in-game activities, and it all feels extremely tacked on and quite unrewarding. Having to do an arbitrary activity like winning without catching the snitch to unlock your team move just isn't very fun. And unlike the cards in the movie tie-in games, these are just short 3D loops that frankly look like shit and don't even have any lore attached. Really? I'm not a fan. So let's move on. Before you start your campaign to win the School Cup, which you will, because the enemy teams are populated by the broom riding equivalent of quadriplegics, you have to choose one of the 4 houses, which include all of the fan-favorite characters like Harry Potter, Draco Malfoy, some guy from Hufflepuff, and Token. So, since I am an ally, like alliteration, and sensed the business opportunity to reach an audience of 64,000, I chose Cho Chang, and proceeded to completely screw up the school challenges because the keybinds shown in loading screen are hard-coded and didn't correspond to the ones I was actually using. Very confusing. Overall, the House Cup serves as a tutorial, as the challenges are mandatory and gradually introduce all of the mechanics that you will use to put the ball in the hoop. Here comes another problem though. This game is for children, and not hardcore children who grew up on Ninja Gaiden, Battletoads or Rayman. This was for children like my sister, whose biggest gaming challenge was making sure I didn't drown all of her Sims when she wasn't looking. Unsurprisingly, since I beat this game as a young child, now that I've evolved and returned to it as a level 100 man-child, it is extremely easy, which brings me to the gameplay. The two teams are composed of 7 players each, but for the majority of the match, you will be controlling one of 3 chasers who try to get better possession, score goals, and to evade their own teammates' attempts at passing. The last part really ties the whole thing together and is done automatically by the AI-controlled chasers. It also helps that the camera is very zoomed in, so you can't exactly see where the teammates are. In addition, if you hold down the combo button while passing and scoring, which is actually quite uncomfortable on the keyboard, you generate special sauce, which gradually fills your special sauce meter. When you gather enough special sauce, you gain access to special moves, like Nitro, Homicidal Ball, and 2 different types of bribery. The first one usually pays off the enemy goalkeeper to take a smoke break, but sometimes instead pays off the referee, who counts goals that never actually happen. The second one also pays off the referee, but more, letting you straight up ignore the rules while you rack up points and aggravated assault charges. All special moves, with the exception of Nitro, also reduce the enemy sauce bar, and since the game only ends when the bars touch, the more you dominate your opponent without using combos, the longer your match. Once the bars are touched, it is revealed that the special sauce was nitromethane all along, and you enter a minigame where you use it to catch the golden snitch and score 150 points for your team, effectively invalidating the rest of the game. I have never played badly enough for the enemy's secret to become a threat, but from my own experimentation, they seem to use the classic rubber banding AI, so once you get close, you better grab the balls. Overall, the whole game can take anywhere from 4 to 40 minutes. So where are we? Right, once you demolish the other Hogwarts teams, you can enter the World Cup, where you've got a choice of Europeans, the Japanese, and 3 subspecies of the British. I personally chose the Germans. Again, because I am an ally, and they seem to have a disabled person on the team. More importantly though, they also have the objectively best grunt, with the French being a close second, and a team move that scores 30 points, which is unique to them and Ravenclaw. And yes, that means I managed to choose the 2 most meta teams completely by chance. But there's one more step to take before the cup begins, and that is choosing your broom, which is actually the difficulty settings, something I didn't know as a child, and honestly, I nearly missed this even as an adult. And that's because, to understand the system, you need a solid grasp of Joseph Schumpeter's approach to business cycles, and realize that by choosing the better broom, you're starting the process of creative destruction, forcing enemy teams to adapt and upgrade as well, thus increasing the difficulty. Now, finally, you can start the titular World Cup, that is more of an European-style league, with 1 home and 1 away game against every other team for 16 games total. And at the end, the team with most points wins. There are no playoffs to add stakes, and again, because I was absolutely demolishing everyone, except for the Yanks who actually scored 40 points once, the whole thing was an enormous bore. Case in point, as I was writing this script, I realized that there was a special move tackle that I never used, because I always had possession, and my opponents never used, because they didn't have enough sauce. And it really is the main problem, because fundamentally, these sort of sports games rely on 2 main features: name recognition of players, or in this case the IP, and the core gameplay. And by the time my nostalgia ran out, I realized that the gameplay loop, while fun, is quite shallow and works best in a close game, where the tension is kept until the snitch is caught. So the final rating really depends on your skill. I would have really appreciated a 5th difficulty, and for that reason it is a generous 6 out of 10.